Greetings, my guzzlers. Well, not that it make any difference when this goes out, but right now we're in that time twixt Christmas and New Year. And that, having rather sort of overindulged over Christmas and getting ready for me New Year's Eve banquet, I'm going to take a little bit lighter in between. So we're going to go Korean and we're going to have a stir fry. I must remember not to touch that. So I've just been toasting some sesame seeds. So that's all a bit warm. So I mustn't put anything on there. We're going to make some japchae or japchae. Japchae. This is a Korean dish which we've had to make a slight adjustment on because it traditionally uses what is essentially sweet potato glass noodles. Can't find them anywhere. Can't find them anywhere. You can find rice noodles, egg noodles, whatever. So unfortunately we're using rice noodles, rice vermicelli noodles. Okay, but classically it should be these sweet potato ones. So anyway, it is quite a quick and simple dish, but I've still got some prep to do. I've done some prep. I'll fill you in a bit. But anyway, japchae. So to start with, we're going to make our sauce. Okay. And for that, you're going to want, you're going to want some sesame seeds. And that is sort of a classic part of this dish. Toasted sesame seeds. They are freshly toasted. In fact, that dish has got quite warm now. So I've got 2 tablespoons of freshly toasted sesame seeds, and they're going to go in there. You're then going to want to add some brown sugar. How much have I got of that? Half a tablespoon of brown sugar. In that goes. Garlic. You want about 3 cloves of garlic. And we just want to sort of finely chop that up. You could use your garlic crusher if you like. I've decided to do it with this. I do sharpen my knives actually. I'm still not quite there yet. I've tried to sharpen these at 15 degrees and I suspect they were probably originally 20. So I've still got a little bit of more grinding to do. I'm using my new sharpener, Christmas present. My Oral 2 roller sharpener. Bit extravagant, I know, because if you ever look them up, they're a bit very expensive. What they are, to be honest. But anyway, that's the subject of another video. So that's that done. That goes in that mix. Now, we want obviously a liquid component to this. Probably doesn't do me nice and good doing that, does it? So, for that, you're going to want some white soy sauce, some dark soy sauce, and you want some sesame oil. And that's it. So, the sesame oil, we want 1 tablespoon. Okay. Now you're going to want some more sesame oil later. Probably actually got enough in there. I bought some more because I wasn't sure if I'd have enough. Right, light soy sauce. We want half a table. No, that's the dark one. That's the dark. We want half a tablespoon of dark. We want 4 tablespoons of this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You won't want that again. Just double check it. And like I say, half a tablespoon of that one. Okay. So that, he says, double checking, yep. That is our sauce. Where's my little spatula gone? My little dinky one. Got some new spatulas, new spoons. I can't find it then. Where are you? There you go, hide it there. So, just going to give it a little mix together. Essentially, that's all going to get chucked in later. Okay, so that's the sauce prepared. Apart from the noodles, classically it has vegetables in it. Now, it may also have meat, beef, which is what we're having. Although I do believe you can have chicken or pork if you want to. And it normally has mushrooms, and it's obviously got soy sauce in it, which is part of that sauce. Pardon me. I don't know why that wine's making me burp. It's actually more of a side dish. Banchan. Or banchan. But it is also eaten as a main dish. We can have it as a main dish. Now, what I've got here, it says go for about 3 or 4 spring onions. I've got a whole bunch there. And we're just going to take the green parts, you know, the tops, if you like, even though that's not particularly green, that bit. Okay, and we're keeping them separate. I'm going to put the green bits for now into there, and we're going to want the white bits. Now, these are quite chunky, so what I'm going to do with these real chunky ones, I'm not only going to cut that like that. The other ones I'm just going to sort of pretty much cut into sort of half lengths. And yeah, I think I might cut them in half that way. They're a bit chunky, aren't they? You're going to want about 50 grams of spinach. I'm using baby spinach. Didn't necessarily have to be baby spinach. A bit of onion peel, drive me mad. Right, so going to put up there, that's what. So that's my spring onion prepared. I might chop that green up in a minute, but that doesn't go in just yet. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want is our carrots. Now, I've peeled these, and what we now want to try to do is sort of julienne them. So I'm going to try using the mandolin. Now, you really only want 1 small carrot. I've got 2 prepared here, simply because doing it this way, I'm going to get a bit of waste. So I'm just going to julienne them up. We want it nice and neat, because this essentially was once a royal dish. I've done my carrot, by the way. There's my carrot. So I've got the spring onion, white bits, the carrot, sort of nice thin strips, julienne if you like. Glass of wine. So this started out as a royal dish. And even though now, this is, by the way, about half of a large red onion. These are quite small. Oh, excuse me. So I'm going to do 1 whole one. Just going to thinly slice them, and they're going to go on that plate on that plate with that lot, because this is all going to be the first stuff in the wok, as it were. But yeah, so not only has it become a more common dish, it's still very much associated with like celebration and parties and things like that. Whoop, where do you think going? Get back here. You're just trying to get me to burn my hand on there, aren't you? Yeah, so it is very much a sort of a celebratory dish, if you like. Now, I'm pretty much at, oh no, I'm not. So the next thing I've got to do is slice up my mushrooms. Now, the recipe I'm following suggested you use dried shiitake. We have fresh ones, as it were, Tesco's. I've probably got too many here, but I'm going to use most of these anyway. Okay, now these are also going in at this early stage, as it were. So I'm just going to slice these up, and then the only other thing left to slice up will be me beef. Now, this is supposedly like a 15-minute recipe, but it's a bit like when Jamie says I'm going to do one of these recipes in like 10 minutes or whatever. He doesn't include a lot of the prep because it's all done for him, or he's done it earlier. And equally, he's not worrying about all the mess afterwards, is he? So this is going to take a little bit longer than 15 minutes. However, I am waiting on the wife to give me the go-ahead to start cooking. But in the meantime, I can get all this prep done. So like I say, the meat needs cooking. And well, before we can need cooking, it's going to need slicing. But in terms of the vegetables, and this is typical vegetables that you would get in this Japchae. It's a what do they call it? A Sino-Korean word. It's sort of two cultures. I think probably got that wrong. Told you that now. And basically, it's two words, and it consists of two things. So chap means mixed, and chai means vegetables. So it is essentially saying this is a mixed vegetable dish. It's just it has meat in it as well. I'm just cutting the ends off of these stalks. Okay, like I say, I've probably got too much carrot there. I've got too much mushroom, and I'm going to end up with way too much beef. But it's a bit difficult. Essentially, you want about 50 grams of beef. You tell me where you can buy 100 grams of bloody beef. I mean, the quantities that are in the recipe that I'm giving you and that will be listed are essentially for about 3 to 4 people for a light lunch. Often this would be served with rice to make it a little bit more bulky. Right, so I'll take this beef, and what I want to do is just cut it into thin slices. Okay. Now, I should point out, by the way, obviously we're going to have this dish hot, but, well, I say hot, we're certainly going to have it warm, but you can have it at room temperature. You can even have it cold. Okay. Right, I'm just trying to think the best angle to cut this. Obviously, we want quite nice thin slices, but I'm trying to think. You want to sort of, if possible, cut across the grain. But I'm running out of room here. So it started out about 17th century by a cook who was cooking basically for the king. I'm going to say this one, wrong. Guanhagon or something like that. And he was cooking this dish, and he sort of made this thing up and presented it. And so this is the 17th century, and the king was really impressed. He said, "I've never had anything like this in my life, governor." He didn't, because he weren't a cockney. But he more or less was so impressed. He said to the cook, "I'm making you something special, as in not I'm going to make it for you, I'm going to turn you into somebody special." And he elevated him into like quite a high ranking member of his sort of cabinet, if you like. Almost like a Secretary of State. So I'm going to throw that bit out. So that was sort of the origin of it. But this Japchae became a regular in the court. It sometimes would cook without the noodles. Sometimes it was cooked without the meat. Basically, at that point in time, it was a luxurious, elegant dish, excuse me, for the royals and high-level officials only. If you weren't at that level, piss off and have your normal boring noodle. I should point out, by the way, if you're using the proper noodles, you want to have had them cooking. Well, basically, boil a kettle and cover the noodles and let them sit in that hot water for 30 minutes. And then drain them off. And basically then keep them cold. Okay, put them in cold water. So these noodles that I'm using don't take quite so long. So I've just put some boiling water onto them. Okay. They don't need more than a few minutes soaking at that temperature. And then I'm going to drain them off and let them rest in cold water. Excuse me. And then we're going to cook the ingredients. Now, this royal dish, obviously quite, I'll say quickly, it basically became like a dish for the common people. And then by the 20th century, the cellophane noodles that it originally started out as, they became introduced from Korea into China. And therefore, sorry, the other way round. The noodles weren't really there in the beginning, but the noodles were introduced to Korea from China and therefore became part of the Japchae recipe. Meat started being added because, like I say, the early dish didn't necessarily have the meat in it. But then there's been variations on it with seafood in it, different herbs, peppers, bean sprouts, and other ingredients. Traditionally, you've got your spring onion, your carrot, your onion, and your mushrooms. And again, the mushrooms can vary. Okay, you could have your wood ear, you could have shiitake, which we're having. You could have oyster mushrooms. Basically, it didn't really matter. And you're almost individually stir frying every ingredient. It won't look like that, but essentially that's what you're doing, and then you're building it up until finally you're ready to serve it. And we're putting the sesame oil seeds in the sauce. Often it was kept separate, they were kept back, and they were added as a garnish. So let's get this on a medium-ish heat. Okay, medium to high, and we're going to add a tablespoon, but given I've got some extra ingredients, actually I'm going to use the rest of that bottle up. I'm going to add a little bit extra because I've got more meat and I've got more veg. So just want that to come up to heat. Do that. And I can also put that in the cupboard, ready for Ron later on. Because remember, now we've got everything here ready to go, and actually we can get rid of that as well. So I said to you, you're essentially cooking each ingredient, stir frying each ingredient separately. But we're sort of going to do most of the veg together. So once that getting warmish, this is where now I'm going to add in that red onion. Okay, we're just going to toss that around a little bit in the oil. so I should have given that a little bit longer. Come up temperature. I got this recipe from the YouTube channel Spice and Pans, by the way. He does some lovely. I think I've made at least one of his other dishes from there. And like I say, this was meant to be like a little quick and easy and tasty lunch dish. But obviously we're making enough essentially for 4. So we're going to make it as a main meal each. We're not putting it on the bed of rice, like you might do if you were cooking in this quantity and serving, say, to 4, and you want to bulk it up a bit, you'd add some rice. Right, so that's the onion starting to come at temperature. Next thing, we add in that carrot, and we just give that a little bit of a stir fry into it. Essentially, we're looking to get these vegetables starting to go. Oh, got a bit of spring onion in there. Starting to go translucent before we decide to cook the meat off. Okay, now in go the white bits of that spring onion. Okay. And I'm just going to give that a little toss around. There's a bit of spring onion in there. And then finally, I'm going to add those mushrooms. There's a lot more mushrooms there really than I want, but I'm not going to throw away most of the packet. Okay, hence the reason I've used a bit more oil, because then mushrooms will take up some of that oil. So at this point, in go those mushrooms and all the other little bits. And now, like I say, we're just going to toss this around until the veg, obviously not the mushrooms, start going a bit translucent. Right, my onion's starting to, this is my red onion, starting to look translucent. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to push everything over to one side, and we're now just going to put that beef into there, if it wants to come out, that is. And what I'm wanting to do now, just got to separate it out a bit, is we're just going to cook that. I'm going to turn that heat down a little bit more, until it's no longer pink. Okay, my meat's just about there. So at this point, I'm going to add a generous pinch of salt. You could, of course, done that when you're cooking the veg. But I like to be a rebel and pretend I forgot and add it later. Anyway, we're now just going to mix all this through, okay, with that veg. Some of that meat's a little bit on the pink side, but to be honest, it's beef, and it's going to be carrying on cooking for a little bit longer. Obviously, if that was chicken, before you stir it in, make sure the chicken is cooked through. Forgot to move that over. Now that's all mixed in, we take that spinach and we're going to put that in there. Turn that heat down a little bit more, it's a bit fierce on this one. And essentially what we're wanting to do is start getting that to wilt down. Now, I removed the real ends of the stalks. Quite often when I use this baby spinach, I take the stalks off altogether, but for a little bit of extra texture, we've left that on there. Now, your green tops go right in at the very end. I'll turn that too low now. I think I might have turned that too low now. Okay. So, like I say, we want these to start wilting. And actually, watching him do it, he said, you know, when they've started wilting, blah, blah, blah. But actually, by the time he went blah, blah, blah with the rest of it, they were definitely wilted. So now the idea is we've got all that sauce, but a lot of that should be absorbed by the noodles. So, you know, there's a bit of moisture in the pan. You see that spinach is starting to go. I could probably have put more spinach in there, actually, to be honest. I did have some spare. But anyway. So I'm going to give that a little bit longer, and then that's when you're going to want your noodles. So like I say, if they were the proper traditional noodles, cook them or let them soak in hot water for 30 minutes, drain them off, soak them in cold, and then we're going to drain them and put them in there. Because I'm using rice vermicelli because I had no choice. Tesco's, useless. They have all these other Korean stuff. They just didn't have, and all the loads of Chinese stuff, just didn't have these particular noodles. I'm going to take these noodles. These noodles always sort of all stick together. So just trying to separate them a bit. Not sure if I'm going to put all of this in there. Perhaps I might put most of it in there. So there we go. Right. So we then get that sauce, and in that goes. Obviously make sure you get all them lovely toasted sesame seeds in there, and get rid of that bowl. Tidy as we go, tidy as we go. So I'm now just going to start mixing all that through. In his case, he said turn the heat off and then add them green bits in, and essentially then just leave that off the heat until they start to wilt. But there's very little liquid left in here. Okay, so very little liquid left in there. So actually I'm just going to leave it on that heat a little bit. I'm just going to stir that through. So all that's left now then is, once I'm happy that those green bits have sort of softened enough, we don't want them mushy, okay, but I think we need to let them soften a little bit because they're quite chunky bits. We'll be serving up. Let's have a go. Here's a bit of beef. No real strong flavours there, I would say. Bit of earthiness from the mushrooms. You're getting the beef. Chopsticks as usual are playing up. A little bit of sweetness which I think is coming through from the vegetables, not necessarily the sugar. Certainly pleasant enough, not got a problem with it. Just perhaps not got the overpowering, well, not even the overpowering, but not even got the strengths of some of your other sort of stir fries you might have. Even though there's no stock in that whatsoever, I would say it's almost like there's beef stock in that. I can't believe that sort of just come from that little bit of beef. Green parts of the onion are still crunchy, but overall, your Korean Japchae fit for a king. And now I'm going to give it to a queen. The meal, that is, don't be rude.